She Shed Comedy with Linda Schwartz, empowering your comedy career.
Hey everybody, welcome back to She Shed Comedy Podcast. I'm your host, Linda Schwartz. This is a show that's dedicated to empowering your comedy career. Today we have a very special guest and I'm super excited to share her with you. Her name is Fielding Edlow, and Fielding is a writer and comedian who is creator and star of Bitter Homes and Gardens with her real-life husband Larry. She also hosts the hit monthly show Eat, Pray, Fuck at Hollywood Improv and voiced the recurring character Roxy on BoJack Horseman. Now let's get into the show.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to She Shed Comedy Podcast. I'm your host, Linda Schwartz. And today I'm with Fielding Edlow. Fielding, thank you so much for coming on my show. And I'm so grateful to have you. So let's get started. How did you get into comedy, and share a little bit about your story? And
yeah, thanks for having me. I was thinking about it. I was in that sort of nebulous purgatory age of 27 in New York City and was having a really weird, horrible email relationship with a guy 7 blocks away. We never saw each other. It was all over AOL. And I remember I even changed my email. So I was like, I've had it. Like everything was so dramatic. I went from like Liz, Fielding's my middle name. So I actually used to go by Elizabeth. But so I went from Liz to like Miss Sparkle. But anyway, somebody had taken me to UC Bede. And it was back before it's become this like conglomerate, like just huge, almost like a corp. Like it's just so far reaching now. But it was in like almost was like a torture basement around the corner from like a thing. I watched Amy Poehler and Tina Fey just do improv on this Sunday night. And I was like, it was like going to church or temple. It was like a spiritual experience. And I was like, I don't know what that was, but I want a part of that. And I remember I hung up on like Mr. Sensitive Ponytail Man, and I went to a class. I just took a class, and it was one of those things where it was the same experience I had, because I went to acting school after college, where I was my only joy, because I had some personal issues in my 20s, and I was like, this is family, this is my joy. I wouldn't say they were like, oh my God, she's here, stop the, SNL, let's call it, but it was like, I learned how to make mistakes and make a fool of myself.
Yeah. And, I feel like, so I'm in the beginning stages of my own comedy journey, and I feel like I'm failing forward very, very quickly, and it hurts a lot.
Yeah.
So can you share a little bit about what those, maybe, a time in the beginning when you really recognized, or was there one significant failure that you gleaned a lot of lessons from that you could share with us?
It's interesting. I mean, there are a lot of like, I think the biggest thing I learned was to not, because I'm someone who's really hard on themselves and came from a really self-hating place and self-flagellating place. So it was more, I think my biggest failure was not going for it.
Oh, wow.
And because like my parents, I remember they were like, they wouldn't pay, like they were supporting me at the time. They wouldn't pay for level 2. And I did well in my level 1 class show. I mean, I would be horrified to watch that right now. but they'd like pay for a facial, but not an improv class. So, but I didn't say fuck you, or like I'm gonna, like I was back and forth, and I didn't totally commit, probably. And I don't even know if this totally answers your question. I mean, it took a while before I had that sort of unwavering belief in myself and had that sort of intangible, like I'm committing to this.
Yeah.
And I think it happened actually when I was pregnant, 6.5 years ago, when I got into stand-up. And it was also age. I'm like, I'm not 20 anymore.
Yeah.
Let's go for this.
Yeah.
But in terms of like that's macro versus micro, like I guess learning like a failure. I mean, I in terms of like something that didn't go my way, because I was also pursuing acting at the time. Like I almost had too many things. Like I remember one time a guy was like, are you trying to be MGM? Was it improv, stand-up, acting, writing? Like, you have to focus.
Yeah.
So I think it was some of those just late 20s amateur mistakes, which are fine, but also like just that, not even fear of success, like terror of success.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. And so I watched a few of your episodes of Bitter Homes and Gardens this morning, just preparing for the show. And what I really loved about what I saw was how you were able to pull all of these universal themes with such specificity.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Could you talk a little bit about that process and your writing process of how you cull your material?
Yeah, that's so funny because I always go back to the more specific, the more universal. So it's like, I always come back to that in my writing. So it's just interesting that you led with that.
Yeah.
I guess I not only do I have to write what I know, but I have to write if I'm going to look at a project and if it goes for a month or 10 years, I have to be excited by it, and it has to make me giggle, and it has to challenge me. And my marriage is that. Like, my marriage is like is the Damocles sword, or like my Achilles. I mean, that's the thing that's like, oh my God, it's funny. We're pitching it right now to cable. And I was in the session we got hooked up with these amazing producers, and I was saying this the other day. I'm like, that tattoo Angelina Jolie has? They're like, what are you talking about? I was like, it's in Latin, and it's like quod norit. Basically, it's translated to that which destroys me also nourishes me.
Wow.
And I was like, that's my marriage. And that's what, it's not like, because I always write really personally, but sometimes I've performed about something that I'm too close to, or it's a trauma, or it's a pain that I'm not totally worked through. But this is something that hopefully is entertaining. It can be excruciating on some level, but it's never going to be something that like we think we're Long Day's Journey into Night or something. Like, yeah. I'm just trying to shine a light on like exactly what you're saying, like these specific arguments that show how unbelievably self-centered we are, and how we take ourselves so seriously, but we're also like just fighting to be heard. Yeah. Which I think is the maybe universal thing. Or my husband just wants to be respected, and I just want to be heard, and like he becomes my dad and I'm his mom, and it's like we're just throwing childhood issues onto each other, even though it's so embarrassing because we're adults.
No, I think that's what's so relatable about your show is that I think that we are, I mean, as human beings, we're driven by our underlying beliefs, but I love that you have this awareness of those beliefs and can really share it in a way that is so naturally relatable. And I just think it's fascinating, to be able to have that kind of awareness and bring it in to a medium that can shine the light on it, and on the same token, like really draw the comedy out of it, because it's so for me, watching it, I was just like, oh my gosh, I can, and I'm sure that it's relatable on so many levels for so many people and congratulations, by the way, that you're pitching this to cable. Can you share a little bit about that process? Like how does that even work?
Yeah, it's a lot of it is this serendipity and not pushing it with my will, but like, so we've been through a couple of different producers, and it's had a lot of different and it's like I've been pushing it forward just through the internet, like with my snack vlog and blah blah blah. But the latest producer, I think, was literally just a random a friend who had happened to see it and was in a meeting with someone else and was like, have you seen this web series? You have to see it. And then sent me an email being like, I didn't know if you, and the producer was the executive producer of Friends, and it was like a dream come true. And it's like I finally am landed with someone like with real comedy people, and that's been such a dream. And they're also they're just really kind, and it's like they're even, it's so funny, they're like, it's mostly been me, and they're like, let's meet Larry now, so then they're like, Larry's got to be in the pitch, you know what I mean? It's like, it's all about, they just want to serve the show in my voice. Ooh, sorry, let me just, okay. And then I think it's been years. I mean, to be totally honest with you, I mean, we launched this, I want to say in 2016, at when Nerd Melt, we had a premiere at Nerd Melt, and like, I was humble enough to not think we were gonna like go viral, and that's the thing. It is really, I mean, the start of this show was someone asked us, commissioned us at a night at a temple, and the theme was forgiveness, and the head rabbi came up to us and goes, I relate to this so much. I mean, we're so filthy. We toned it down, like, don't say blowjob, we're at a temple, like, everyone stop. But it's like like, we have our editor does our snack vlogs in our 20s, and he loves it, and he says his parents love it. So it's just, I think I just want to be true to self. So anyway, in terms of the journey with producers, I think it's along the way, we've had other ones. It never, when you're a right fit. And I think that, like, my stomach is a little like, oh, that doesn't feel right. But I know they're like really high level. They just won an Emmy, but this isn't my show.
Yeah.
And people will be like, well, what have you done? I mean, you should just do it. They want to make your show. But like, I'm like, but I can't make the show they want to do. And it wouldn't be great. It would be their show. It wouldn't be my show. So it just has to, it's just this weird thing of patience and trust, and becomes kind of, I don't know.
No, I hear what you're saying. And, staying true to your voice, like, yeah. I feel like that is probably one of the most challenging things that an artist go through, right? Like, especially somebody who is pursuing a career in comedy or writing or whatever, staying true to who you are is for me, like, even for me, when I think about it, I'm like, oh, like, even though I'm still in the beginning stages, I'm projecting into the future and thinking
of course,
how I am going to make a living at this, and staying true to myself, and in the process finding a deeper resonance of my voice and what I'm in for in the world. So can you share a little bit about finding your voice and what that means to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's because I feel like throughout since I guess I want to say my 27, it's like people have remarked on my voice, like, you have a strong, and then so in a way it's almost like it feels like it's the only thing I have. And so it's like, you want to protect it. So how do you protect your voice, and how do you continue to shape your voice? And also, my first one-woman show, it was like the most, it became Coke-free Jap, but it started out as Hands and Me, and it was like, I basically read my journal in a baby pool of vodka in the East Village, and I was like, I'm so challenged, this Upper East Side Jew, you know what I mean? I'm sober, but it's like, okay, like, it was sparks there. And then to develop my voice, to really be honest, not to sound like a cliche, but I did morning pages in the Artist's Way a lot. And I just did I would take myself on the date, drive in the neighborhood, and I spent my life in class. I spent my life in class doing exercises and pushing myself and taking risks. Like, I tried spoken word at the Nuyorican. I did improv for a really, really, really long time. And I knew, and I embraced the darkness in me and my dark humor, and I kept going towards that, and I kept going towards what people were responding to, but most importantly, what wasn't fun for me, like what made me laugh. And generally, it's like how I am. I mean, it all kind of came together, like how I am with my best friend at dinner is how I am on stage, how you would see me now. But that took a long time to meld.
Yeah.
Because I was almost this personality magician. I would be whoever you wanted me. With it, I still was figuring out. It took a while, but the seeds were always there.
Yeah, I love that you brought up The Artist's Way, because that was one of the books that absolutely changed my life.
Yes.
And
yes.
I found it not because I wanted to be an artist. I just wanted to be more social, honestly. Like I suffered from a severe case of social anxiety, and I still have some level of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it was because of that book, doing the morning pages and committing to these exercises. And I think one day I just woke up and was like, I'm just going to go for a walk. I think it encourages doing like a 20-minute walk or something like that, right?
I should do that again.
Many years ago. And I wrote morning pages for 7 years straight.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. That's
morning.
Wow.
Yeah. And I love that you said that you're just constantly in class and constantly learning and doing these exercises. Can you share an exercise that has really been impactful for you to maybe get to the heart of your self-expression?
There's been, I studied with, I think she's in the hospital right now. I also started out, I want to say, as a playwright, and I am writing a new play now, but I took this class with Irene Fornes, who's a big playwright, and she's like, don't write, just sketch, just like sketch your play. And, I'm not a visual artist, and my drawings would be like, oh, a toddler could do a better job, you know what I mean? But it was one of those, like, getting myself out of myself and off of myself. And again, this like idea of being humble and open and teachable. So that was one. I didn't meet my husband there, but we both studied with Jeffrey Tambor, and he had this like kind of master class for like looking at your whole life as art. Like, it's not about the show or the pilot. He's like, oh, I can't even stand the word pilot. Like, please don't even say pilot in my class, but like your whole life is a work of art. So he would say, in terms of, he would say things that like, he'd say, when you go somewhere, go down a different road that you never, go into a different neighborhood, like kind of artist way kind of stuff. And then he also had us write a poem. He had us make a vision boards, I think, were like, because my vision boards were really like, I feel like frightening, like with really like potent, scary images. Like I was like, I have to throw out my dad. You know what I mean? Like really stark images that were like, I have to pay attention to that.
Yeah.
That I cut that out of a magazine. It's easier for me to cut that out of a magazine than say it.
Yeah. And, I'm also hearing you say that, you've just been following these impulses that have been coming forward for you. And kind of, for me, the vision that I get is just the unraveling, taking a thread and unraveling and following until you get to something that really strikes you. And I love that that you were able to discover this part of yourself through these exercises. And I wonder if you can tell us about maybe the moment that you knew in your heart of hearts when comedy or when this journey was your path of self-expression.
It's funny as it is, but I love that metaphor. That's exactly right. It is an unspooling, and there's even this thing in recovery where people are like, you're trying to peel away they talk about peeling the onion. But I always say it's the artichoke, because your heart's like an artichoke. It's not an onion, right? And everyone's like, oh, an artichoke. But, but I was saying as a lifelong recovering people pleaser and the validation, and my parents never supported. They don't really support. And that's fine, because it's only made me kind of go on different journeys. But I was working as an intern in the casting office of the Roundabout. And I guess this is one answer to your question, but it was during that time, I think I was like dating a woman for a month. Like I was just trying everything. And I really respected this casting director. Actually, her name's Amy Christopher. She's just a huge casting director. And I think I'm just starting my journey. And I came into the office and I was just completely myself that day. And I just made a joke. And Amy looked at me and she was like, you should do stand-up. And it was like, it sort of changed my life, because here's someone who was just a powerful person and had a very, like a searing acumen, and like she had really great taste. And she said, and I knew that, it was something I needed to pay attention to. And it almost felt, like she was the messenger. And then I had, I guess there were other points, but that was when I was like, something was like, you can't let that go, Fielding. You have to pay attention to what she's just said to you.
Yeah. And what did that lead to? So how did you start to unravel that and get into stand-up comedy?
Well, it's funny. I was a terrible stand-up when I first see. I mean, but it was really, because like I think I said before, I was too close to issues. Like I was in an eating disorder then, and I was dealing with parents, and it was like I literally this was the opening line of my set. Okay, I go, is it incest if your dad just wants to date you? That was how I started. And like, that's pretty good, not terrible, but I couldn't totally back it up. And I didn't have enough. And I literally had my sets. I went to Patricia Field, and I would wear like a rhinestone necklace that said cunt. Like that was, there was no heart and there was no vulnerability.
Yeah.
So I did try it, and that was great. And then I wasn't enjoying it. I was terrified. I remember like I brought 10 people showed up for me at the Stand Up New York, but I didn't have 10 minutes. And the owner was like, do 10 minutes. You brought so many people. But I didn't have 10 minutes. And it was just but that's all kind of good and humbling. And so I put that, I wasn't, but I had enough self-awareness to be like, I'm not enjoying this and I'm terrified. And this is not, doors aren't opening. And then that's when I took my first improv class, because I remembered what Amy said. Okay, I'm funny. She's validating me. I mean, improv, I needed to work it out. And I also think improv is amazing because I literally learned how to have conversations with people.
Right. Yeah.
And like, it's not about making, I think, my idea brilliant, but my partner's shitty idea great.
I love that. I really do. And what just came forward? Yeah, like, and for me, it's like what just really came forward for me is you mentioned vulnerability and working and dealing with your issues so that you can get away from the emotional attachment from it. That's what I'm hearing from what you're hearing. Yeah. And being able to like just put a lens on it that can just, draw out these specific things that have maybe happened and view it in a way that can be conducive to, helping people heal.
Yes.
And I love that. And, what does vulnerability mean to you?
Yeah, it's interesting because I still struggle with it greatly. I mean, I think my husband's seen me cry maybe 25 times in 12 years.
Wow.
Maybe more, but it's like, and he says things like, you can't be an artist unless you cry once a day. He's always crying. Like literally, he cried like 4 different times during Sex and the City, like the movie. Yeah. And I was like, why do you relate to this? And why am I with someone who relates so much to this? I'm so embarrassed for both of us. I'm like, I haven't cried since Rocky's coach died. But anyway, the vulnerability, I think it means if we can circle back to the beginning, and is that we're like willing to fail forward or fall forward, and truly, I think being in the moment and like wanting to just, I don't know, this like non-attachment or detachment from results or the laugh or the even connect, but just like, this is what I'm working out. Hope maybe you'll come along for the ride, maybe you won't, but I have to do this for me. And then it turns out not to be selfish, because that's that staying true to yourself. And I don't know, I think sometimes in my stand-up, I got the note, and it was hard, from a friend, and she's like a successful actress. She came to see me and she didn't say anything after the show. And I remember I was really upset and I was really hurt. And my husband was like, just email her and just stop, and I did. And she goes, yeah, she was like, I just feel like you were really harsh about your husband. Mm-hmm. And she was right. So I worked on, how can I not always make it about other people and my vitriol and my aggression, which I can do well, but say, well, this is why these are my insecurities. And then it like blows the whole thing open, and I get more laughs, and I get more human, I get more grounded. I don't have any fear on the stage, and I start being able to look at an audience member in the eye, as opposed to like performing, but like, I see you, I notice that you're a bachelorette party, I notice that you're eating a chicken parm right now, and it's like, we're in this canoe together, and then I'm vulnerable because I feel safe.
That's so interesting. That's really fascinating, that vulnerability in the dynamics of vulnerability, that you're so present that it elicits this feeling of safety.
Yeah. It's so funny because you're it's so this paradox, because it's illusory, this feeling safe because I'm like tough bitch and I make it about everybody else and I just want these little sound bites. But the note I've always gotten, whether it's like writing or stand up, is like, slow down and pause, like about everything. And in any like Hollywood meeting I've ever had, literally the person's like, I love this, like I love it. I mean, it's not like I've had like fucking, I'm not like killing it in Hollywood, but they're always like, where's the heart in this? Where's the heart? Where's the heart?
That's really great. Like, and what is coming forward for me now is this idea of like slowing down and pausing. And I would love to hear your thoughts on, because I know that in stand-up, especially in the beginning, you have to fulfill like the time that they give you.
Yes.
And so when you are, starting out and you're, and performing is such a, there's such a dynamic to it that you have to be, there's this overarching level of awareness that you have to have, your self-talk, the audience, the business aspect of it, coming, like showing up with your lines, knowing the material, and only having, in the beginning, maybe 3 or 4 minutes. So what are your thoughts on taking that compressed time and with the advice of slowing down, like I feel like there's just so much going on, and but also like the presence that you have to bring to it is a matter of like just being grounded in that moment on stage. Can you share just a little bit about of that?
Yeah, no, that's an awesome question, because I'm figuring this out. I think it boils down to like some little tricks. They're like little tricks. Like the show that I run, improv, like I'm able to have like some like big names, and sometimes I get the fortunate, like sometimes I get a note from some people, or like, well, we were just talking about comedy, and I remember Billy Gardell, he's in Mike and Molly, he's like big stand-up, and he's a great guy, and I remember he was like, he's like, you got to get him in 7 seconds. That's what he said. But he's right. And as much as you can feel constricted by that and pressure, it freed me up, because, and if I go back and watch my sets, let's say, but if it's like, I just did my first 40-minute set, which was like thrilling and horrifying at a rehab. And it was like it was all fully lit in a living room with people not doing great. But my point is, it's like, have my go-tos where I can, not even like the things that Fielding says, like, oh, I'm like grown up Daria, or I'm like, I look like a disgruntled, PA. But it's like, talk about the room or where we're all at, and listen to what the set before and pick something out. Like, you have to unlock the secret of the room. What are people feeling right now? Be the voice of the people, as lofty and as weird as that sounds. Get them in 7 seconds, and then I can relax.
Wow.
But they have to know also, it's not just like but it's not just like the like kill in 7 seconds, but it's about, they have to feel like they're in safe hands, right? So they have to know that I'm going to be real. That's the other piece. Yeah. Because a lot of comics have like and I'm not saying I have not mastered this on any level, and I still feel like a beginner, but I feel like a lot of comics, some comics have this persona, or even this voice they use on stage, or just like, it feels like an act, and that can work for some people. But my favorite comics are like Mark Maron or Jackie Cation, or people who are just, again, they're themselves. Yeah. And they're real, and they're going to get up there and literally just, it's like, you get who you get. So I think it's like, I don't know if that's a kind of complicated answer, but
no, I mean, and that's the thing. It's like, I've just been so in my head and trying to find my voice and trying to do all of these things and making sure that I understand the dynamics of the room, and it's been, it's been so overwhelming.
It is. It's very overwhelming.
Yeah. And I want to know, like, when was it for you that you really knew, or was there an instinctual moment on your journey that you just felt like you had, or you knew how to read a room? Like, what is that process like for you?
That's a great, I love that question, because I, again, like had we learn like from hard lessons, right? So I was doing a showcase. I'm open. I've taken stand-up classes. I think they're really helpful. And so, like, that's how I started. But so I failed at a showcase where that's where you're going to get a tape, and this is where you really got to shine. And I've done well, but this particular one, the woman who went before me was like literally for the first time was discussing being an escort, and it was very visceral and raw and funny and powerful. And I was in my head and in fear, and this was probably about 4 or 5 years ago. And all I could think about was the tape and my set and, you know, my blowout and did I look thin and all the bullshit, just the bullshit. And then I got up and I didn't acknowledge what happened just before I went. And my set at that time was very sexual. So there was even a way to mold that in. Like so then it went okay, but I didn't have fun. I didn't feel connected, and it felt like I was pushing the boulder up the mountain.
Yeah.
And I got kind of shut down after that, and I got upset. And then I had this conversation with my teacher, and he was like, you didn't unlock the secret of the room. Like, you could have just gone there and been like, oh my God, like, what did we just witness? Does anyone smell cookies? Like, what is that? You know what I mean? But it was a huge lesson. And then I vowed to myself. And ever since then, I always like pony on. And this is where my improv background comes on, which makes it fun. It feels like it's not just me alone. We're continuing the conversation. Like, I remember I went at the Ice House after like a silent deaf musician or some like performance arts musician. And I remember I had almost one of the best sets of my life, just because I had a great connector to what I was like, did we just see what is happening here? You know, I mean, so, and then it's more fun because I'm with the audience and I'm not in this like kryptonite sort of bubble.
Yeah.
I'm like, let's have a shared experience. So I guess, and it was really painful because I also felt like a selfish artist and a selfish comic by not just acknowledging who went before me and her bravery.
Yeah. Yeah. God, that's so beautiful. Cause I know for myself that, it's terrifying, and
it is
to go up and also, you know, being in that learning phase of trying to write material, memorize it, perform it, and then like recognizing that there is a dynamic and that it is such a reciprocity, like there's
a lot of it's a conversation
happening.
It's a conversation. It's just they're not talking back, hopefully.
Exactly.
I mean my first class was with Lewis Black at Williamstown, and that was the first time, and that was where I had actually met Amy, that casting director. Was at Williams. It was like the theater world. And I remember Lewis Black kept making the point, it's no different than you sitting in a bar with your friend and just 6 feet away is the microphone. There should be no difference.
Oh, interesting.
So I know what you're saying. It's, you know, I had different points where I called my manager at the time and I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I have a child. Am I supposed to do this 2 times a week or 3? And I literally didn't know how it was going to happen. I wasn't having that much fun, or like calling my sister-in-law and being like, just call. I think a lot of this is having your tribe, figuring out who your tribe is, the people you can call who will tell you to keep doing it even if you want to stop or you get disenchanted or you get, you know, little sitting on your heels.
Yeah.
Because there were those phone calls that reinvigorated me or gave me the courage to go to the next open mic.
Yeah.
And I think breaks are important. A lot of comics never miss a show and like blah blah blah, you know, and they're doing 3 shows and like they're not necessarily my favorite comics sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think breaks to refuel. Jeffrey Tambor was big on that. And again, like, you know, my friend a good friend was really good friends with Tig Notaro, and I always remember she saying to me, and I don't think anyone would care about my saying this, but she was like, Tig was not good when she started. It was not good. I mean, I think she's a genius or whatever. She was working it out. Like, and I got so much from hearing her say that.
Yeah. And I mean, God, I think we all start there.
Of course.
You know,
you're raw. It would be weird if we were a goddamn sensation. I mean, you hear those things where it's like the waitress at the Comedy Store gets a standing ovation the first time she does it.
Yeah.
But then it's not going to be that every time.
No, I mean, yeah. And I feel like, you know, there's, for me, I mean, I know I keep bringing it back to me. I feel so selfish, but
no. You must.
No, and you know, we're actually coming up to the top of our time together. So, but before I let you go, I would love to just hear, you know, what you think are the 3 qualities of a comic that would, you know, I wouldn't say qualify, but you know, the 3 qualities a comic needs to find success in their performance or in the industry, in their work.
Yeah, I think, well, first, I think Jackie Cation like wrote almost a referendum on, if you just Google, I'll even send it to you. Like, I think it's like she wrote 10 things about just being able to sustain yourself. But for me, tenacity comes to mind. If you can, even if it's like, again, the like torture basement, all guys, like 2 a.m. open mic or whatever the fuck, but like that you're having a blast no matter what. Yeah. As much as you can for that day, you have a blast. And like you try a new thing, one new thing at every show. Yeah. And then maybe that's 3, but I think it feels like it's a spiritual experience on some level every time I get on stage, and just to come from that place of like, how can I best be of service here? Yeah. How can I, like you were talking about before, healing. I'm not a healer per se, but maybe we can all heal a little bit if I am as truthful as possible. I love that. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so excited for you. I can't wait to see you. Thank you. I love this podcast, Linda. I just think it's this is like, because Jeffrey used to be like, is the work needed? You know, that was his whole thing. He used to shout, and I feel like this is really needed. Like, this podcast is really super important, and like what you're doing. And I'm just excited for your journey. Oh, thank you so much. And for our listeners, where can they find you on the interwebs, or I have a website, fieldingedlow.com, for any shows. And then if you feel like watching Bitter Homes and Gardens, and you should, we're like Facebook, in Instagram, at Bitter Homes. And then you can watch our first season, bitterhomesandgardens.com. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really great meeting you. And it was enjoy Idlewild in your paradise without your I think I'm going to have to do something like that. You're more than welcome to come up anytime. I'll get the cabin next to you. Great. Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Sure.
Hey guys, it's Linda again. Before I let you go, I just wanted to say thank you for listening. And if you enjoyed this episode, please come by and show your love on one of our social media pages. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. And if you want to download our RSS feed, you can do so right on iTunes. Thanks again, and I look forward to sharing more content with you. Take care. Bye.
She Shed Comedy. Like us, follow us, share us. Tune in next time.